Is a dead man controlling the weather in Europe? This is a crazy story, but there is some evidence to back it up. Specifically, we're talking about the PK Man, who is made famous by Jeffrey Mishlove. If you don't know Jeffrey Mishlove, he has a podcast, New Thinking Aloud. He is also the winner of the Bob Bigelow Consciousness Studies program. I think he won like $500,000 or something. And well-deserved. It was a really great essay that he wrote for them. But he's been in the paranormal or parapsychological game for a long time. And he even has a degree in parapsychology. He's a great guy. I love Jeffrey. And he has talked a lot of times about the PK Man who could control the weather. And it's somebody that Jeffrey actually knew and was acquainted with. And a very interesting and colorful figure. Not always a nice guy, but a very interesting figure. Anyway, he died a few years ago, but Jeffrey has recently established contact with him through meditation. And he has put forward a test. He has proposed a test to the PK Man, whether or not he could still influence the weather from beyond the grave. And Jeffrey Mishlove says that indeed that has happened, and he has the proof. So let's talk about it. This is Jack with Cosmic Road. I talk about UFOs and the paranormal. Please hit like, please subscribe, share on social media, and comment below as I'm going through the story. So what proof is there that the PK Man is still controlling the weather from beyond the grave? Well, here's Jeffrey talking about it.
December 28th, on January 1st, an enormous heat wave hit Europe, unlike anything that's ever happened before, which is, in my opinion, typical of the Ted Owens demonstrations, and even more.
Ted Owens, of course, is the PK Man.
Or so, the Washington Post quoted a meteorologist or climatologist named Maximiliano Herrera, who specializes in extreme climate events. And he actually wrote, "This is totally insane. It's absolutely crazy." He said, "This is the most extreme climate event that has ever taken place in Europe." Now, here's the rub. Most of the changes took place in other countries than Ukraine. Although, in my mind, the test was set up specifically for Ukraine, and I'll come back to that. But what happened is that pretty much all of Europe, if you can believe this, like 1,000 temperature records were broken on one day. It was just amazing. And the upshot of that is that, according to one report in the oilprice.com website, the war in Ukraine will be shortened because of the weather. And the reason for that is twofold. First of all, apparently, according to many analysts, it was Putin's hope that because much of Europe is dependent on Russian oil and natural gas these days, that their dependency would cause the NATO allies in Europe to go soft on Ukraine. Or as Margaret Thatcher once said, to go wobbly. Go wobbly.
Yeah, that's what Jeffrey originally wanted, was to help Ukraine. He wanted the PK Man to help Ukraine in the war. And, from beyond the grave by influencing the weather. And according to what Jeffrey is now saying, that mission has been accomplished, even if the specific goal of heating up Ukraine was not accomplished. The overall goal was accomplished. How did all this happen? How did all this come to pass? was actually a viewer of Jeffrey's on his podcast, New Thinking Aloud, that contacted him a few months ago and said she had been in mental communication with Tad Owens, the PK man. And he had contacted her and wanted to send a message to Jeffrey Mishlove saying that if Jeffrey wanted to interact with him, that he would be available for Jeffrey to do that. And so Jeffrey did. He had questions for the PK man and reached out to him in meditation and apparently received a response. And so Jeffrey, being a very scientific fellow, a very intelligent guy, established this test. He says, okay, well, you're known for these amazing dramatic displays. Why don't you affect the weather of Ukraine and actually help in the war effort? So that was the test that was done. And so the results are an historic heat wave in Europe, but not Ukraine. However, it apparently has helped the overall war effort.
On Ukraine because they need Russian gas and oil. But due to the warm weather, it turns out that the price of gas and oil dropped to levels that hadn't been seen since before the Ukraine war began. So the nations in Europe weren't really dependent upon Russian gas and oil at all. In fact, their stockpiles have increased. And on top of that, they're getting liquid natural gas imported from the United States and elsewhere. So that robbed one source of pressure on the European nations, but furthermore, because the price of natural gas and oil dropped, these are Russia's biggest exports, the revenues that Putin supposedly is counting on to prosecute the war are greatly diminished. So that's another benefit. Now, from a parapsychological point of view, I have to call this an example of displacement, because the idea of creating this enormous heat wave in the rest of Europe outside of Ukraine wasn't in my original intention or in my original plan, although one could say it's totally consistent with it. It was in the spirit of it, but not the letter. So from a scientific point of view, analyzing the displacements becomes very difficult. I could tell you emotionally, it makes perfect sense to me that Owens, from his perspective in the afterlife, would be able to see that this was the right move to make. But from a scientific point of view, you could certainly argue, a skeptic would argue, a friendly skeptic would argue, that this isn't what you specified in the original presentation.
By the way, Owens, the PK man, in life was apparently in touch with aliens or extra-dimensionals, the beings. He was in touch with the mantis beings. Specifically, he had names for them, Twitch and Twitter or something like that. There were two of them. He says they were energy beings, but when they appeared in physical form, they appeared as the mantis beings that many U.F.O researchers will be familiar with. The mantis beings are said to be the overseers of the Greys. Whatever project the Greys are doing on Earth or in the solar system, the mantis beings are overseeing them and running them, maybe even creating them or some of them, since many of the Greys seem to be created beings, that is, biological robots or whatever you want to call them. However, it's unclear to me if the mantis beings make them or if they are created by the taller Greys that seem to be genuine, non-fabricated beings. So, the original Greys, if you will, potentially. But yeah, the mantids as some people call them, are very tall, very intelligent, very powerful, higher dimensional beings. They tend to wear like collars. They wear clothes, weirdly enough, with high collars and like robes. Yeah, I mean, it sounds goofy. I mean, it really does. But so many people have seen these beings and interacted with them, and even established paternal and maternal relationships with them. One experiencer even called the mantid being that she was in touch with her ma. Very intriguing figures. We don't know much about them. They are at a remove, even though many people have seen them. It's a much smaller sample than the people who have seen the Greys. Like countless people have seen the Greys, but only a relative handful have experienced the mantid beings, which are said to be above the Greys, going by many, many, many experiencer accounts. Anyway, so that's who the PK man was said to be communicating with, and they helped him develop his abilities because his nervous system was suited to this sort of ability, and yeah. So why would they help him manipulate the weather? Because apparently he didn't always do good things with that. An interesting figure, kind of a controversial figure, but he is still around in some form, apparently, maybe. I mean, I do believe in existence beyond the veil, but whether people can still exert their abilities from beyond the veil, that is a new one on me. I had never heard that before. There's all sorts of people that have amazing abilities, but to still be able to manipulate on this plane of existence from on the other side is really intriguing to me. But Owens was a very powerful manipulator of weather, and apparently it's not a phenomenon I'm real familiar with, and I don't think it's super common. But anyway, a fascinating case, guys. We have a ghost influencing the war in the Ukraine. I mean, it's hard to get more colorful than that. I wish this stuff was easier to verify. But it is such a colorful story, and it may very well be true, guys. I don't know. What do you think? Let me know in the comments below. Give this video a big thumbs up. I would really appreciate it. That'd be awesome. Please subscribe and hit the bell to be notified of future videos. Please share this video on social media and consider following me on Facebook and Twitter. Links below. And yeah, please comment below and let me know what you think about this crazy story. Until next time, this is Jack with Cosmic Road signing out.